So welcome to our 1st of August 2025 recordings. Joining me here is Lyra.
Hello.
And we have not been quite active the last couple of
We
weeks,
have
right?
not.
But it's a good day for us to come back because, we have been talking a lot about Malaysian's political development, but also, of course, tariff since April, right? And so finally today, I think one of the things that I wrote here is this, USA sets import of Malaysian products at 19%. So it looks like there's a deal. And I've just been looking at various, even right now, you are still getting news that is just streaming out, right? You look at Tengku Zafrul and statement from MITI, kind of vague and general.
Yeah, but this kind of like just remind me of one of our friends who said this, like Malaysians are known to be like last minute, like
last minute deal. And of course, a couple of days ago, Prime Minister did call President Trump. And finally, I mean, at least as far as we are aware of, the first official telephone conversation. And do you reckon, what happened between Thailand and Cambodia and then the subsequent mediation that kind of paved the way for PMX to now step in and, kind of announce to the American, I actually have a role to play?
I suppose so. Because even the White House was also like giving a bit of credit to Malaysia
definitely
as well for hosting the place.
Back in April, when we first talk about the tariff and look at all the nations, remember we discussed about how Malaysia is really not one of the main target for the American because the target is really those close proximity with China, those trans import-export location, which Malaysia is not really. And we kind of, at that time, we kind of predicted, right, that it won't be hard for Malaysia to deal. But of course, subsequently, the complication in Palestine, the complication with a lot of other things that somehow you just get the impression that Madani or maybe PMX doesn't really want to deal directly with American for one reason or another. Of course, I think at the backdrop is China. Remember, all the big shot of China came and things like that. Then Malaysia tried to portray itself with BRICS and things like that. So, do you think, how do you read all these kind of things the last couple of the months? Is it? There's no way around for Malaysia not to deal with America, right? There's just no way.
I think one of the wake-up call was when Trump decided to just send a letter. Technically 2 letters to Malaysia, one to our king and one to the Prime Minister himself. And I think that's kind of like show the severity. I think the, for lack of better words, kiasu, the competitiveness in our Prime Minister probably got stirred up a little bit. Because it's like, hey, it's like every other country has been sending like that top tier negotiator to Washington to like deal with Trump administration, and yet Malaysia seems to be like pretty lax about the whole thing. And even just, you just talk about like a couple of weeks ago, they are just saying that we will not compromise on our red line and whatnot. So all this thing, you begin to wonder, so where do you stand? Because we have been talking so much, we're not like trying to be critical of Prime Minister. It's just that it doesn't seem like he cares about the local affair as much as he cared about international affairs, especially those of Palestinian plight. So I think with that regards, honestly, I'm kind of glad that at the end of the day, the report shows that he was the one calling Trump, or maybe US administration is the one calling him. But the thing is that there's still that sort of high level, I guess there is still that sort of respect from Trump in terms of like, I gotta do what I need to do and like just give you a call and let's settle for a deal.
Now, one of the headline today is really, okay, this one is, one of the headline is, let me just try to, okay. US tariff cut modest but vital boost for Malaysian exporters. FMM is Federation of Malaysian Manufacturers. Now, do you reckon, because so far, when you think about industry leaders and group, they make a lot of noises. It's basically FMM. Of course, Penang Chief Minister have been making a lot of noise because of semiconductor factory. Do you reckon like PMX is kind of like, well, not so important for us to reach a deal, even though our export to America is 12% of the country's GDP, which is significant? do you reckon he doesn't really take it very seriously because, well, in terms of it doesn't really affect the Bumi, the Malay-centric voter base that he's trying to reach out to?
I feel initially yes, but I felt like there is also certain common sense that has been, well, I guess restored. In the sense that, I mean, when he probably saw how United States were being very, very serious in ramping up on their energy production and basically, I mean, even Saudi Arabia, I mean, even the Middle Eastern countries, they are also like very, very welcoming of Trump administration. And I think he could begin to see if he really, really played it hard. And, well, I mean, on one hand, you are like saying that, hey, I'm hosting a ceasefire deal here, and how can you then still support Russian-Ukraine war? I mean, indirectly, you know? So by joining BRICS and whatnot and be like so closely affiliated to BRICS. So I think knowing Malaysia is also one of the main one of the main export produce is oil. So I think Malaysia cannot afford to not be on that same platform to be basically be competitive, you know?
Right. And it's, yeah, I mean, of course, I think there's also a lot of pressure on all the countries, including Malaysia, when all the deals started to come in. And of course, just like about 10 days ago, the ball started to roll, right? When China, Indonesia, Philippines, three nations came into agreement. And we'll talk about the Japan deal in a while, because that sort of set the benchmark for what is to come. But some other headlines, for example, let me see. So this is from Zafro. Malaysian agrees to reduce tariff over 98% of US imports. Then, of course, another statistic which we've been just talking about, right? 61%. Where did that come from? Actually, it's talking about the list of items. So 98%, 61% seems a bit confusing, right? All the things. But then, of course, the other thing, which is from MITI official statement, is that kind of very clearly say that they did not cross the red line when it comes to halal certification and Bumi rights. Now, remember, I think just 1 or 2 days ago, there was a report from Straits Times Singapore, I think, and then later on the Chinese media kind of pick up talking about what is the compromise that Malaysia is going to make. So they talk about halal certification, not even talking about no need halal certification, because I think a lot of people don't understand is this: American export a lot of things to Middle East also, to Emirates, to Saudi, and those places are regarded as the cradle of Islam. So they are like, look, if the cradle of Islam accept a certain kind of standard, how come Malaysians halal certification require additional things to do? So I think that's really the point of contention. So imagine if Malaysian government agree to a kind of halal certification, which Emirates, which Dubai, which Saudi, whoever, Kuwait, they all accept. I don't think you will see a lot of pushback here, right?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, because you think about if additional requirement is all about dollars and cents. So anyway, we shall see the next couple of weeks whether that will come out. But of course, at the moment, they have to remain very tough and say, we have done a good deal. Okay, let me just ask you, 90%, is it a good deal?
I think so.
In light of everything else that happened and in light of the lack of development leading up.
I was kind of surprised though, because I mean, one of the things, I mean, obviously is in terms of the automobile, like the removal of AP and whatnot. And I mean, but
that's maybe a bit us, right? I mean,
yeah, it is.
I mean, we were hoping for that because these are the things which are no good for our country in terms of our competitiveness, you know, all the legacy, all the baggages from NEP and things like that. We are hoping that through, I mean, in a way, it's like foreign intervention, right? I mean, we kind of talk about it in a show that, well, if it can help us to move away from that legacy, why not?
But I suppose, well, I guess Malaysia is still not quite there yet in terms of like letting go of some of these things. I mean, you can't like completely let go of the net that has that protectionism over the local automobile industry. So I think, so in a way, I thought they did kind of like strike a good balance, although could have been better.
Yeah.
I mean, they were hoping for like 15% or maybe like push down some of the items like palm oil, rubber to like zero. But I think for now, it's quite a good deal. I mean, given that, I mean, the perception is that we're not sure how much work have you been doing behind the scene.
Yeah, and if we look at the broader tariff development all around the world, you start to see that the Americans are really not interested in terms of telling you what to do. I think Trump is not interested in that. Even things like you want to protect your own industry and things like that. Fine, I'm not going to do that. But if it's going to hinder me selling to you or me getting sufficient profit for opening my market, so that's why you can see how to negotiate down the tariff. You have to commit certain kind of investment in America. You have to commit buying certain kind of things.
Similar to what happened with Canada, right? You're just saying that they pass a law.
Yeah, the digital tax law, which is so bizarre, and it's like, it's like we already have things like GST, SST, then you have, you can have some kind of levy and things like that. But digital tax is on top of all these kind of things. It's basically saying, look, you're providing, because the argument for example, like Netflix like that, well, they may have an office in Malaysia. I'm not even sure if they have an office. They may not have an office, So it's like, so they are like kind of not even having a cross-border kind of presence, but they do provide service. A lot of people subscribe. So besides the tax and things like that, the government will be like, okay, we still need to take a portion of your revenue. So that's the digital tax. Of course, what is the scope? It differs from country to country. Europe is one of the first to want to do that. So before Carney became Prime Minister, Trudeau and his government, I mean the same party, same government, passed a law. Because so many Canadians use all these digital, it's not just Netflix and things like that, it's a lot of Amazon web storage and things like that, which is so important for e-commerce and things. So when they were doing the tariff, Trump was basically telling Carney, well, no more negotiation because of this one point. So a few days later, Carney and the government say they're going to repeal the law. So this is the kind of example, using trade leverage to force. And while you can argue it's kind of interference and things like that, but from an American perspective, it is what they want to achieve from the economic point of view. So, but then you look at a lot of other nations, look at Korea, Japan, Thailand, Indonesia, not a lot of things against the domestic policy per se. It is really, if you buy more, if you invest more, I can bring it down. Kind of like we have found a general formula with Japan. But before we look at the specific country, I mean, we talk about from Liberation Day and even from the announcement of tariff in April, May. And remember at that time, the tone, everyone is like saying this, I'm not going to pay a single cent on tariff, right? Yep. And if we do that, the American consumer is going to pay and things like that. Remember all those kind of things?
Exactly.
And then even Federal Reserve say it'll be inflation and things like that. All the theories have been proven almost 100% wrong. But I want to ask you this, I mean, your point of view. How do we get from, I'm not going to pay a single tariff, to right now in Malaysia, thank you very much for 19%. It was such a great deal. So how do we go from there to here?
Kind of like what is happening in the EU. I mean, if you look at the biggest deal ever.
They were threatening retaliation, right?
Yeah,
Tit for tat.
But I suppose the president is really, really under like a lot of duress in terms of like having to strike a deal. I mean, because 30% tariff would be like tremendous. So I think it was a good thing that.
You remember
they
the press
showed
conference
model.
in Scotland, and after they heard the broad points, and I think all the reporters were stunned, and they would be like, what consensus, what concession is American giving? Yeah. And I think the EU president basically said, well, the starting point is trade imbalance. Basically, she's saying no concession by the American.
Exactly. I mean, but it was kind of interesting though, because the whole thing was kind of like the deal was struck within an hour. I mean, it's like we'll know within an hour if we'll have a deal or not.
Probably a lot of background work, but I guess in the end they realized, having no access to the American market is worse.
I guess because from that perspective, I think it really, really helped to set the tone for Malaysia as well. I mean, when you see like, wow, one of the biggest continent is basically just, I mean, they don't view it as like, I mean, obviously some of the liberals will be like screaming, hey, I mean,
They are
that's
still
such a
screaming,
bad
man.
deal. Yeah, but the thing is, like, I think when we look at that and then following through with what is happening in Japan and basically, I think Malaysia decided that, hey, I mean, we still take the better deal than not.
Yeah,
taking
I
the
mean,
deal.
I think after EU folded, I mean, that's the only right word to use. I think many other countries realize there is no leverage. In fact, the only country who can drag this on for a while will be China. But even then, that's why you see Trump 2.0 is very different from 1.0. Remember in the first term, he went directly against China. But this time, you see all the deal, you don't mention China at all. But then remember the Straits Times report on Malaysia talk about rare earth deal. Malaysia doesn't have rare earth processing facility. All the raw rare earths will be exported to China.
Yep.
So maybe Trump is saying, well, can you spare me half? Can you spare me 30%? And I believe, I really believe that it is hey, look, we have so much. I mean, not say we have so much, right? If we produce all the things, you cannot be selling to this one country, right? There's this economy 101. You don't sell to one buyer only. Why that buyer is folded? So I would say for the government, for Zafru, it's not a hard answer to give. But of course, the timing has to be right. They'll be like, okay, can we delay announcing it? Because now with EU, with Japan, Korea, everyone is signing deals. China will be feeling very, very
anxious.
Agitated, I would say, because these are all the trading partners, and now you are saying that you're going to willingly pay a minimum of 15% tariff for all export. By the way, up to beginning of July, I think they collected like 180 or 190 billion just in tariff. This is the hardcore cash. And Trump was even saying, well, should we give all the citizens a tax rebate? And he was thinking about that. Can you imagine like suddenly you get a 5,000 check in your account?
Wow.
I mean, we get 100 ringgit, right? It's like, and people are like kind of complaining. But I remember during COVID time, the American citizen did get a few thousand of check. But anyway, I agree with you. The EU deal kind of, I think, broke the resistance, but it still doesn't answer our question, right? When all the people talking about all the negativity, all the end of the world, as Trump will call them, panican, right? Panican. So what do you make of it? Do you think it is because the globalists, the mainstream media, or the government around the world, they are just not being truthful? That means they know there's no leverage, but they continue to play like, pretend to be strong. Or they really believe that American couldn't do this. I mean, where do you stand in terms of, from all the reading of the news, your general feeling about this? Because this is something I find not a lot of people are talking about it, but later we look at one article by John Carney, right? And he kind of dissected some parts of it. But what's your point of view?
Well, personally, I thought it was a bit of an irony because, here they are talking about like globalism and having like free access, free market trade and whatnot. And yet they are also very much, if you look at it, it's such a tremendous exposure.
Is it a double-mindedness?
Yeah, I think so.
Conscious or unconscious?
I felt like it is subconsciously. Because that's kind of like the
and
culture.
Malaysia kind of reflect that quite strongly,
Yeah, because you see those that are screaming this would be like those that are very, very, very double-minded.
They protect their own economy.
Barbaric. Yeah, exactly. But
and they kept screaming free trade.
Exactly.
That's the thing I couldn't tahan, It's just like so hypocritical, right?
Exactly. That was what I thought. And then they are, on one hand, they say, hey, we want like access to globalism, but here we're also trying to isolate our own economy. So long you don't interfere with my economy in terms of like how I'm like protecting certain rights. And I won't say that it is an unfair deal, but at the end of the day, it's really, really like what the president of EU has been saying is like, at the end of the day, we all started off with trade imbalances to begin with. It's like it was never fair on American side because that's what American has been feeling, and they basically because of the unfairness, and it's not even a perceived unfairness. It's really like, hey, it is there. I mean, it's open book for all to see, and at the end of the day, it's like you make a deal, and actually, in fact, if you think about it thoroughly, it really did help the respective countries to navigate through because it's like, I think access to American market is still better than no access. I think that's just a matter of fact. I mean, because if you solely rely, China is not going to take your product.
I think that's one thing a lot of people don't quite understand.
Yeah,
that
like India also is not going to take your product.
These are major super exporter, They are going to dump their product if they can. And I think that's one of the reasons I believe why EU came to deal with America so quickly because they don't want the Asian market to dump in EU. They will be very, very disastrous.
Yeah, I mean, even looking at Malaysia, I think what a lot of people fail to pick up is also that Malaysia has also passed basically you say like there is no anti-dumping from China itself. I mean, even though there is a lot of MOUs that were being signed during presidency's visit here, I mean, still, I mean, if you're like so friendly, I mean, why do you need to make this sort of statement, right? I mean, there's no anti-dumping and things like that, whatnot. And same goes to Vietnam as well. I think they are like the first thought, they're like concerned that, hey, our nearest neighbor is going to like dump all their excess here.
If choosing my own country or China, of course, I'm going to support my own country, right? I mean, it's a no-brainer, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, I think a lot of people don't grasp that idea that actually what China has been doing is really, really bad. And you think it is a fair trade. I mean, I guess in this part of the world, especially Southeast Asia, we're like so addicted to cheap labor, cheap stuff. I mean, we will prefer, it's like our mindset is like so fixated in, I don't mind that the product is cheap. I mean, anyhow, even if I replace it 10 times, it probably doesn't cost as much as me buying maybe an American or European made product. But the thing is like, you want certain things that last for like a longer duration, but not just like get it done and things like that. So I mean, yes, there are certain things that are irreplaceable, but there's certain things that I don't think we should have that sort of mindset because it's really not healthy for the growth of the nation, and we're like becoming so addicted to like cheap stuff.
And all the supply chain issue that we experienced during COVID, you want to rely on just a few nations producing all the important things. I mean, by now, the nations are still not waking up. But very interestingly, I think a week or two ago, there was a Shanghai conference, which is like a national security defense kind of thing. But sometimes, so President Xi was there, and he was talking about to all the local government and how, well, you all shouldn't be doing the same industry. and this is one of the things that happen, when you want to, like EV is a very good example. Now they say there are more than 130 EV companies in China. So they are all fighting to the bottom, to see who is the cheapest. And they say by 2030, you will have less than 10. So you're just going to cannibalize each other. But all the province, the government, they're looking at EV, green energy, AI. So they all want to do the same thing. So the president was just kind of rebuking them and said, why you all have to do the same thing? Because I think now they're realizing you are killing yourself.
Yeah, honestly, I think I was talking to David as well. I mean, the other day, you think like China, I mean, it's a known fact that they are stealing a lot of IPs.
Yeah, but some people won't agree, right?
Well, I mean, you can say that.
That's a very, very general statement. Yeah,
but it's a general statement that they are masters at copying stuff, like copycats, basically. So you will think that they will innovate as time goes. Like initially, maybe, okay, I need to like learn a bit of template and things like that. And then you begin to innovate and do your own stuff. But the thing is like, the template continues. And it's in like, you just basically, I don't care. I mean,
it's cheaper, it's easier. I mean, once you experience like shortcut, you won't go the long way already, right?
Yeah, so it's almost like there is no R&D in this whole process. And so I think that is what is really killing China right now. I mean, aside from the fact that the domestic spending is really not up to par, there is also a lot of this. I think if you take away all this template, what's left of them? So I think a lot of EV cars would be dying, man.
Yeah, that's why I remember when we first talked about the tariff, I mentioned this. I really sympathize with China's position because it's not easy for them to pivot. Because for you to be the number one exporter, I think we said that in our April episode, you basically have to exploit your labor market because it has to be, you have to cut costs. Then you have to manipulate your currency so that it's low, so that it is advantageous to exporter. Then finally, the technology theft you have mentioned, because that's the fastest way. Imagine you spend 10 years R&D, then you had your first product. By then, you have put in millions of billions of capital in already with not a single sale. So it's not easy. That's why when you look at the whole tariff war and Trump looks at the scenario and he immediately knew, look, my per capita income of American is about 80 to 90,000. Nobody else in the world can compete in terms of consumer market. So of course, China could be like America, but then it requires them to kind of upscale the labor market. They have to open the domestic market. They have to allow competition. They have to allow creativity. All the things that CCP is not allowing right now. So it's not really, at the end of the day, I don't think it's like saying, America is stronger or China is stronger. No, both are super economic power, but the paradigm is very different. So for China to continue to have 4 to 5% GDP, which is the way they measure economic success, they have to continue they have to double down. But in long term, you're not going to have creativity and things like that. Of course, people can argue which is a better model. And that's why in recent time, people start to say, well, democracy is not such a good thing. Look at all the Western democracy. But is this a good model? We cannot make judgment. In fact, a lot of people have a lot of opinion on all this thing. They never stay in those countries before.
Exactly. I just kind of like what Scott Bessent has mentioned, the Treasury Secretary of United States. I think this was during the Breitbart some policy.
Yeah, just 2 days ago, right? Yeah.
And he basically just said, hey, because the I would say the youth group, I would say those under 40s. There were a lot of young men in United States. They were very, very discouraged previously. Because low wages and because you're like having to compete with foreign laborers and that like just made illegal migrants basically. But what he said was that now they are starting to look at that growth within their own country in terms of like the wages going up, and then they are able to like earn more wages.
Yep.
I think at the end of the day, it's restoring families in the United States, and it's also restoring that sort of financial freedom to the respective family. I thought that was like a great model because of all this thing. And you would think that, hey, Trump is like going all out to target all the globalists. I don't think he's really, really trying to do that. At the end of the day, it's really about making America great again and basically just allowing a lot of reshoring to the country and basically just let's have American dream revive again, and especially for the Americans. Yeah,
and the reshoring part of the whole tariff war is really going to be the most challenging one because you can't do that quickly, and it's like, especially after 30, 40 years of, taking away your manufacturing. So that's why the whole package, start with tariff, and then you want to reduce tariff, then you have to encourage nations to invest. That's why I think this is a good time to look at the Japan deal, because it's going to be like a template, right? So Japan basically 15% flat tariff. Most of the things will be open to American product. But then here's the thing, why Trump can give 15% is because Japan pledged to invest 550 billion. Of course, we don't know the time frame. Is it 4 years? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Then plus a lot of purchases. So they pledged to buy 100 Boeing. Somehow it's Boeing. I don't know why. And also 17 billion in defense expenses. Japan, of course, if they spend on defense, it will be on American weapons. So it looks like the template is like this. You want to bring it down. You either invest in US or, N&O is even better, you buy things from us. So this is part of the reshoring strategy. Then, of course, with their mass deportation, with the tax cuts, all these things is a holistic strategy, which at the end of the day, so another thing Bessent said 2 days ago is how does a country become rich? You increase productivity. And I just can't help but to compare, we just have Malaysian plant 13 come out, right? And I know it's more kind of like slogan, big picture planning at this stage. Every year you still need to look at the development and budget, but you just can't help to compare, right? Look at what the Americans are doing, right? They are doing more deregulation, less law, easier to do business. They're removing tax. They give you incentive to do business. But then look at what the European model, the socialist model, and the Malaysian model, right? More tax.
Yeah.
In fact, remember in a recent protest, Turunkan Anwar, right? And there was one kind of, I think like is it a door or something, right? And then, or mascot like that show PMS as, they call him with the C logo, right? Chukai Man. And now, of course, there are some justification. He said, look, I'm removing a subsidy. I need to have more income. Sure, fine. But you don't seem to hear our economic leaders, our national leaders talk about how can we cause people to earn more. They always say raise the minimum wage and things like that, which is fine. But it's like, if you just increase salary without production, that's going to be a disaster, because like what Margaret Thatcher said, eventually the money runs out.
Exactly.
So I just look at these two very contrasting philosophy, and but the globalists is like that, so they just want more control and things like that. But that's not what we want, right? We keep on saying we want self-determination, we want small government, we want the freedom to pursue happiness. But anyway, it's just a good way to I kind of want to talk about that as a concluding point. But anyway, let's talk about one more thing, then we can, because tariff is really, I'll be honest, the last 2 or 3 months or 4 months, this is like the main thing that really consumes me in terms of, because I look at the whole thing as there's a way, it's a reset, it's an economic reset that can cause nations to have more freedom, or we can go into a more China CCP kind of economic control system, which some people kind of are quite desiring. Have you heard people who say that, it would be good if our economy is like China one, all controlled by government?
Yeah.
Yeah, you heard people like that. Smart people say that, but we have not been under that kind of system.
Well, I think that the most justification that I've heard is that, you need someone tough like presidency so that you can control billions of population over there. But I felt like it's just bizarre, because it's almost like you're trying to restrict your own people from flourishing.
Yeah, you can control, but the issue is, do you make the country more prosperous? And of course, some will argue yes, but that is exactly what Trump is doing, but he's using a different model. So time will tell which model is more successful.
Yeah.
But it's another topic for another day. But let's talk about the last point already. And I want to look at this article by John Carney of Breitbart Business. Of course, he's an economist and their chief economic editor. And he put an article which kind of like sum out. We kept saying, right, are people really ignorant, or they don't care? And this one is called Putting a Price on Admission to Americans Market. Now why, it's not like because we are super pro-Trump and things like that, we go to Breitbart, but Carney really has a very interesting take on tariff. And I have to say, I did learn a lot from him, because initially it would be like tariff is like tax, it feels like a kind of protectionism, like pretty much like Sarawak government don't allow importation of West Malaysia milk, those kind of thing. But after 3-4 months, you can start to see that Trump knows what he's doing and his team of advisors. But let's kind of explore some of the theme he said in this article, and then we'll kind of wrap up this episode. So anyway, this is the starting point of the article, and I quote, he said, "For years, critics claimed Donald Trump's tariff strategy would backfire because they argued tariffs were derided as taxes on American consumers." Remember in April when Trump said he wanted to do the reciprocal tariff and things like that, and people will be like, well, the consumer will suffer. But then you start to see websites even like Shein and things like that, they put a point there, all tariff for products shipped to US will be absorbed by the seller. So they are not willing to lose market share and things like that. So, and Because all the anti-tariff are saying that there will be retaliation, right? So there have been threats of retaliation. I think EU is the strongest. I think China is the only one to actually did retaliate, right? For a while. And then they kind of stopped.
Yeah.
I actually want to think about China. I know we're not trying to be China bashing here, but they have been going into manufacturing of their plane. What's the brand called already? So that C something. I suddenly cannot. But it's like they are actually one of my friend who is a aviation fan and said that that's essentially a rip-off on Airbus. But anyway, that's another topic for another day. But I was really, really surprised because I really thought they are ready to make plane by themselves, because it's like, hey, come on, the Wright brothers. It's like so long already, right? I mean, it's not that hard to make a plane, right? I mean, I'm not an engineer, okay? And so then I start to read news, and even from China, and say that Comac, and say that 40 to 50% of the products needed for the plane, like hydraulics, brake, and things like that, China could not manufacture them. They need to buy all those parts from an American producer.
To know how to make it.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, maybe they they are a huge manufacturing powerhouse. Maybe they don't specialize in this kind of thing. But it just shows that, look, even for China, there are certain parts they cannot produce.
Yeah, I mean, that totally blows my mind.
Yeah, I was very surprised, because I thought like the Comac, it's like they're quite ready, because it's already flying, I thought they were like doing massive production already. So this kind of, so their retaliation kind of lasts for a few weeks only. But anyway, let's come back to Carney's article. And then, so of course, the case study that he kind of point out is the EU, right? EU kind of, he said, swallow their pride and did a 15% tariff, and with no reciprocal tariff on US. So what is US paying? None. So that kind of stunned all the reporter. So and then you get all the economists to moan and things like that. But here's a few points. I'm just going to quickly summarize what Carney said, then maybe you can give me your take, right? So he is basically arguing that, look, this is not closing, this is not protectionism. This is not saying that we want to protect ourselves, but instead it is leveraging on the fact that America has the largest consumer market, and if you want access to my market, you have to pay. So that is the change of the whole concept. And he kind of quote here: the US is not abandoning the global economy or the rules-based international order. They are simply rewriting the rules. And this is his two conclusions, okay? One, and I quote, tariffs are not about walling, like you wall off America from the rest of the world. It is about building a system which economic privilege is tied to strategic loyalty. You want to have my market, it's a privilege, but what kind of loyalty are you showing to me in terms of national interest? So the conclusion, of course, from the EU deal is even at 15%, trading with the United States is the best deal going. So this is really, at the end of the day, he's trying to argue. But what's your thought on all these things? Especially with all the countries, I think they were making a number, right? More than 60% of the economy of the nations involved in terms of their GDP have signed a deal with America. So looks like they are buying this, or they are forced to do it.
I'm not sure if it's like forced, but I think they do consider the whole
What's the alternative, right?
Exactly. I mean, like, yes, here you're like trying to scream that, hey, I mean, it's not fair, because then on the other hand, I think a lot of ideology of like the so-called free market has been challenged. And basically, how can you have access? I think it's kind of like normal to actually, I mean, even in business dealings as well. I mean, you want to have like a certain access. You have to. I mean, I wouldn't say like it's a membership sort of,
but it's very common, right? I mean, this you're in construction industry. I mean, legal. Like one of the most common one would be developer build thousands of houses and they want lawyer to be panel. So I'll give you 600 units, but this is going to be the dirt cheap price. You're going to flat rate, and you take it because you are given access to 600 clients that you don't have to look for.
Exactly.
But in return, they say I want minimal fees. I'm going to pay you 600 per unit. That's it. and the law firm will take it because now you have access to one of the biggest developer in the country, for example.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of like it makes a lot of economic sense in terms of like trying to do that. I mean, you
It happens
get
all the
access-
time in marketplace, right?
Exactly. So it's like you cannot have just one-way traffic. So I think a lot of them realize that, hey, I mean, what they have been presenting, I mean, they are very, very serious. I mean, the United States, they are very, very serious about this whole thing. And basically, it is something that turns out to be, I mean, I guess people also look at like how Americans are responding to this, and you don't see like a lot of Americans are really, really supportive of this whole tariff by Trump administration, and basically it is making the country even more stronger, more respected than ever. I think because of what Trump has done in terms of making America respected again. I think a lot of countries are like saluting to it, because it's like, what other alternative have you got? I mean, I'm not gonna have to. It's not like BRICS is gonna be like up and running very, very soon. So I guess when they look at this whole thing and they just felt like, hey, I mean, I would still rather have my country interest being put first.
Yeah, it's really a comparison, right? I mean, do you want economic nationalist sovereignty, or do you want globalist? We look at pandemic time, COVID-19 time, you have WHO who can do unilateral guideline, and in fact, they want nations to sign to say that they can issue directive that binds nation who sign, this kind of thing. So we're already seeing the European Union has become that kind of government where the bureaucrats really, that's why I think this time the top bureaucrats in EU are under a lot of pressure, because all the nations, the 20 plus members are very, very anxious and they want a deal fast. Otherwise, they're going to make I don't know how they're going to, maybe they won't elect them or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's a price to pay also, So do you want to give power to a set of bureaucrats, or do you believe in the political process? But in a way, you can say China's CCP system is like that, right? You're trusting the expert, you're trusting the bureaucrats. But that's the pros and cons of democracy, right? I mean, if you in Malaysia, we still have a reasonable degree of democracy. We managed to change federal government a few times,
Yep.
and which everyone in the past said cannot be done, but we have done that peacefully. But you have the danger of electing a government that may not do what you were hoping for. So that's a whole macro global level, what people are trying to choose. But let's kind of wrap up today. I know we go many, many places, right? But where do we go from here? I mean, maybe let's look at Malaysia first. Maybe let me ask you, do you think this 90% will hold? And because why I kind of put in a very cautious mode is because of the behavior of our leaders, kind of like trying to present themselves as we don't need to deal with America, which is, you think about it, is very, very ridiculous, right? But I'm glad, they sorted out. Do you think it will hold? And what does the future hold for Malaysia?
Well, I do certainly think it will hold, honestly, because I think when they see actually just how bad the China market is doing, I think they will probably prefer this alternative. I mean, even as much as they are like screaming, hey, we don't need American market and things like that, I felt like there is that portion because it present a better alternative in many, many, many ways. I mean, not saying that United States is more superior than China. It's just a matter of like having that sort of access to United States like never before. Because on one hand, you're saying that, hey, I mean, we're having like on a very, very friendly terms, and yet like one side the neighbor is always closing the door. So I think now Malaysia is like just starting to open up the doors, and I felt like the protests of Turunkan Anwar actually kind of like helped the Prime Minister himself to shift a little bit of the mindset. I think because he is, well, like it or not, I think he is kind of like
he needed a win, right?
Yeah, I think he's kind of like in it for a popularity run, and like to have that sort of thing happening now, I think it's really, really not good for him. I think personally, probably it hurts his ego a little bit, but I think in a good way.
You mean the protest, is it?
I think so. I mean, in a good way. I mean, yes, a lot of I mean, obviously, there's.
I mean, it's quite partisan, right? At the end of the day, even though it's kind of organized by. I mean, in the end, all the civil rights society didn't want to join also, so it really become a PN kind of like.
But this is not the first time Malaysia has been doing U-turning. Hopefully, this U-turn sticks for a longer run.
Now, let me ask you: do you? I mean, of course, it's less than 24 hours since the whole announcement. Can PMX take this as a win?
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely think so. So that will be the part I'll give credit to him, that he can claim a victory. But of course, more challenging will be how do you maintain this and how do you become like a valuable partner, right? I mean, look at Middle East, right? It's really like the way Trump recognized Syria kind of shocked a lot of people in the Middle East, and they don't have to agree with the American policy, but I think you look at the Saudi crown prince and all those people, and even Qatar, which is kind of like a hotbed for radical development, they kind of look at Trump and it's like, well, maybe we can deal with him. I mean, not everything, but there will be certain things we can carve out some kind of cooperation. So I really feel like there's an opportunity for our Madani and PMS. Yeah, I mean, certain things you're not happy with Palestine, Hamas, fine. But come on, let's agree to disagree and find the things we can agree.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, actually, I kind of like have a thought as in, I think in a way it's kind of like a U-turning on some of the SST, because I mean earlier on you are saying that like imported fruits are subject to SST, and now you have like
Florida orange juice.
Yeah,
are you looking forward to checking the price?
61% of the products are actually being waived. I mean, in terms of tariff. So I'm actually kind of like looking forward, because I think once people have tasted the goods of the land, and I don't think people will want to like go back to more inferior products and things like that. I mean, but basically, I think it's time for Malaysians.
Yeah, you have choice, right?
Taste bud to change.
I mean, if you want to buy, like local concentrated orange juice, fine, no problem. You're willing to spend 4 ringgit, 5 ringgit, or you want to spend 20 ringgit. I mean, let's say you only drink 1 liter per month, you can afford to pay 20 ringgit. Right? But if you need to consume 1 liter per day, then it's going to be 600 bucks. Is quite a lot. Not to mention diabetes, right? And so that's the thing. But anyway, we shall see. But one last point I want to make before we kind of wrap out is, I mean, the last 3 months, we sort of have seen a lot of what Trump called panican, right? Panican, however you want to pronounce. Like people kind of, even today, because of all the global resetting of tariffs, the market kind of went a bit. So you know how market always cause people to become emotional, right? So just one very simple question, and then we'll kind of wrap up. Do you think we can safely ignore the panican from now onwards?
I think so. I mean, even the market was responding very, very well to a deal that has been done between United States and EU. So I think that shows it's a good sign, as in the market is gaining confidence in, hey, I mean, in terms of doing all this thing, I mean,
they're accepting the whole concept of tariff.
Exactly.
That's not going to kill us like forever kind of thing. Well, it has been interesting 3 months, and let's see how this holds up. And of course, I think there will still be more things to say. I mean, we initially want to kind of talk about domestic kind of, but this is probably the most important news for Malaysia at the moment. So we shall see. So I think that's all the time we have for now. So until next time.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.